When is a failed state? Is a roundabout question of asking, a way of asking the same question. When can it be said that a state has failed? When is a failed state? This question was initially provoked by a video Mama P, I believe she's called, a beautiful firebrand sister who speaks truth to power without blinking. I saw a video of her. I've seen the same video she was highlighting, showing terrorists having press conferences, heavily armed, attending press conferences with our soldiers in attendance. And I'm certain that we would have had members of the DSS and other paramilitary and security forces, usually in attendance at this show of shame, where terrorists, non-state actors bearing arms that are by far more sophisticated than the ones borne by our own soldiers, they will be in attendance, and there will be the press with camera, and the terrorists will grant press conferences. Pictures will be taken with sophisticated arms, presented in more or less like what you call trooping the colors, showing exactly what you got, like a parade of some sort. And whilst this has continually shown me the impotence of the Nigerian state, its complicity, and its readiness to mollycoddle evil, I hadn't really had it slapped in my face like I found when I was watching the video by Mama P. What was it? She was drawing attention to the fact that, she has a very graphic way of expressing herself. But she brought home the reality of the failure of the Nigerian state. She brought it home to me in broad relief. It became very impossible to ignore the incongruity of armed terrorists supposedly negotiating or dictating peace terms. But the particular one was of a terrorist who was giving a press conference emphasizing the fact that, look, I've let go of about 40 victims, so please be careful how you don't dare to come near my camp. The guy was vibrating. And Mama P was running a commentary in the video. And it slapped me. You know how it is when something is right there in front of you. You've become acculturated to it. I've spoken often of those who live close to sources of foul odor, maybe like public toilet or refuse dump, and how they become desensitized to the smell, and they would carry on living, eating their meals, living their lives, right there by the offensive odor, because they become acculturated to it. But when I watched the video, it brought it all back to me. I've commented variously on the fact that Nigeria is a failing state if it hasn't failed already. But that particular video, all the pictures I'd seen in the preceding week, all brought it home to me. And it reminded me of Campbell's prognosis. Campbell was the American ambassador in Nigeria at some point, and he had said that Nigeria was going to fail, I believe, by 2016. That was his prediction, which I believe was also based on some CIA scenario that had been drawn up, some CIA estimation of the likely point of Nigeria's disintegration. Now, I would not have bothered myself to go on this tangent, but there are some of you who are certificated idiots, pardon my French. You are completely incapable of connecting threats. So let me clarify that point. The CIA and John Campbell were busy gaming the end of Nigeria in 2016. But the same CIA and the USA were part and parcel of the evil ones who brought about the APC. The APC is essentially a creation of Nigerians' stupidity and American evil complicity. It is not by accident that a Canadian court concluded that the APC and the PDP are terrorist organizations. This is because of the fluidity of membership. But the reality is that the true terrorist organization is the APC. It is on record. Various members of that organization, former members of that organization, that they imported terrorists into Nigeria in the lead up to the 2015 election. So it is not a surprise that the US, which was complicit in that evil, would have been gaming the destruction of Nigeria by 2016. So before the CIA will tell you Nigeria will collapse by X time, it is because they have looked at multiple factors, including the ones that they have set in motion to draw the conclusion that this is the likely date. The only thing they did not factor into that plan was Jonathan's cowardice. Cowardice in the sense that Jonathan did not act like the typical African dictator or African ruler. He blinked. He congratulated Buhari. He walked away. Elections that are nowhere near as close as the 2015 election have been rigged in Nigeria and nothing happened. The 2023 election is an example of brazen theft, but nothing happened because the system was designed to ensure that that was what happened. 2015, Jonathan blinked and left. If Jonathan had not left, the imported terrorists were meant to do the job predicted by the CIA and Campbell. Get that clear and let it sink in. This is important in the light of the current effort in the US to intervene in the Nigerian mess that they created with all this their noise about Christian genocide. And don't worry, I'm not one of those denying the genocide. I've been calling attention to it for some time. There is a genocide going on, but that genocide is engineered by those who are today making noise about getting rid of the genocide. So let us be clear that it is for you to open your brain, because if you do not use your brain, they will use your head. So now, I remembered what Campbell had said in the light of the reality of what Mama P was pointing out. The reality is that there are multiple reasons to believe that the Nigerian state is failing. Now, when is a failed state? When a government loses control over a monopoly of violence, that state has failed. The reasons for the loss of control are another ball game, and we should examine them so that we can reinforce the point that this is a failing, if not a failed state. But my purpose is not to just tell you that it is failing or that it is a failed state. We'll come to the point of action. This is not about belly aching. Our situation is urgent as it is critical. But it is critical and of critical importance that the lesson sinks into your head so that we are not arguing facts, so that once we are done settling on diagnosis and we've stopped arguing facts, it becomes easier to deal with treatment. Diagnosis first and then treatment. When is a state said to have failed? When this government have lost control over a monopoly of violence. Look at the Nigerian state. For various reasons, the Nigerian state has lost control over violence, the monopoly of violence in its territorial space for various reasons. Let me show you. In the northern part of Nigeria, let's start from the northwest. The Nigerian state began to lose control of the northwest in the lead up to the 2003 elections, when the likes of Yerima weaponized Islam and declared Sharia And Olusegun Obasanjo declared it political and ignored to enforce the law. Islam was weaponized. That was the critical factor leading, directly responsible for the emergence of Boko Haram. That was the beginning of state-sponsored terrorism in northern Nigeria. And that was the gateway by which almost every jihadist group in northern Nigeria began to grow. Violence was licensed by the state governors in pursuit of re-election in 2003 and in sustenance of their powers for 2007. It was the beginning of the violence and the loss of control of monopoly of violence in Northwest and the Northeast. The same madness traveled down into the Middle Belt because of state complicity. I'll remind you of Commodore Lawumi's open testimony before in the channel studio, where he made it clear that there are persons within our government as at 2016 who were complicit in the sponsorship of terrorism. Buhari knew this. The entire government and security apparatus were aware of this. They did nothing. The madness seeped downward into the Benue. That is on one hand. That is a simplistic way of showing you the madness. That is one. In the South, the politics of secession led to the militancy that consumed the Harry Marshal and that led to the creation of the boys in the creeks, who are essentially political thugs when they set out. Today, some have become kings. Some are busy wearing jalawaya up and down the place and declaring themselves to be mujahideen. But that was the advent of the madness in the South. Militia that was set up for politics, who began to license piracy and madness in the creek, and the Nigerian state has never regained control. Never regained control. Tolerated it to the point where today, you have a private militia guarding your oil pipeline, contracted to guard your oil pipelines. That is the country that we have built. When is it a failed state? Exactly when does it become a failed state? Come closer to the West, the land of the proud Yorubas who constantly ronu. You think we are spared? I'll show you. The population of Agberos in Lagos, I've assured, not just in Lagos, I live in Lagos, so I'll speak about Lagos, but it is all over the Southwest. Agberos are the enforcement arms of our political ruiners. The state is no longer in control of the monopoly of violence. That is one. When a state has lost authority, when it has delegitimized itself to the point where the people know that the state itself is criminal, legitimacy, the loss of state authority, how much more criminal can a state be than the Nigerian state in the eye of its victims? Just barely a week from now, we'll be celebrating, those of you who have the capacity to remember, the massacre of unknown numbers of fellow Nigerians. Whatever reasons you have found to dehumanize them to the point where you have managed to discountenance their humanity, the reality is that they were Nigerians like you and me, and they were murdered by persons who are meant to be their protectors. I see people glibly telling me sometimes that Nigerian youth, they are lazy. Like you look at Madagascar. Madagascar soldiers joined the protesters. Your own soldiers murdered flag-waving, innocent, harmless citizens, quote and unquote. Where is the legitimacy of the state that kills its own people? I'll remind you, before that, there was a preview. It happened in Zaria, Burattai's convoy, over 400 victims of the Nigerian state. The only reason none of you were outraged and it didn't cause as much noise as the NSAS did. It's very simple. Oh yeah, not only were they Muslims, for those of you in the South, they were Shia for the other Muslims. So that legitimized their murder. There's always a reason why the other person deserved to die. And then there was Odi, there was Zakibian. There are multiple places all over Nigeria, the southeast, where the Nigerian state daily demonstrates that it does not have any legitimate authority over those it calls citizens. It kills them routinely in enforcement of state authority. Where is the legitimacy of a state that routinely murders those it calls citizens? When is it a failed state? The third is when there is a failure of public services. Where is the healthcare system in Nigeria? Where is the healthcare system? Where's the water? When I was growing up, Inolinde in Ibadan, opposite St. Stephen, you turn the tap in my grandfather's house, tap will run. How many taps are still running in Nigeria today? You think it's by accident that you are busy drinking seaweed, this one, that one, let's see, this, that water, that water. The entire water system is gone, privatized. What is the role of government? They borrow billions, trillions, and they squander it without bothering to provide water. And what do they tell you? They will tax your boreholes. There are actually laws allowing them to tax your boreholes. Tell me, how much more does it require to show you very clearly and graphically that the Nigerian state is failing if it has not already failed? Should I talk about electricity? Thank you, my brother Shola. Should I tell you about electricity? $16 billion, not naira, dollars. That was what Obasanjo and Atiku spent providing darkness. That was what they spent. $16 billion. Nobody is in prison for it till date. 16 billion. Wrap your mind around that. And then recently, that joker from Ibadan, Adelabu, how far can the apple fall from the tree? The Labu is talking about going to China to borrow even more. Who is fooling who? Who is fooling who? What has happened to our educational system? A friend is on this broadcast. I've seen him drop a couple of comments already. Shola Ogun. We went to Fidelity Grammar School together. Grew up in Lagos here. He's a Lagos boy. They sent him to my mother's village to come to secondary school. I went to the same village to attend secondary school. We got better education than any one of you are getting today. What has happened to the public education system? Why is it that even the poorest person living in urban areas have to send their children to private schools that are teaching nothing but ignorance? How much more does it take to convince you that your state is failing if it has not failed? Another factor that helps you to tell when a state is failing as ours has failed: widespread violence and human rights abuses. Look around you. Nigeria has been in a slow burning civil war for over 1 decade. If you put up a map of Nigeria, you know those maps they call situational maps, and then you start putting colored pins to indicate problem. You move from blue for peace to yellow for violence that is not orchestrated but is widespread, and then you use red. I warrant that you would hardly find a part of Nigeria where you can stick that blue. It's going to be a bed of red and yellows. Nigeria is suffering from widespread violence. Those who are living on the front line are the people in the middle belt and those who are in Oyo, part of Ogun, Kwara. Can you hear me? Oyo, part of Ogun, Kwara. Those ones are already red. The entirety of Oke Ogun, Kogi, the Yagba axis, the Yoruba speaking part, infiltrated heavily by Fulani terrorists. They are being daily slaughtered. People are killed every day. It's the same in the Benue Trough. It's the very same in the Plateau. These are things happening, and it is happening with the direct complicity of a state that is in cahoots with terrorists who are killing those who should be its citizens. When is a failed state? Obadiah told you he's dead. Everybody will die someday. But you don't get away with the luxury of claiming you were not told. You've been told these things. Wherever you turn in Nigeria, there is widespread violence. People are being kidnapped on Benin Ore Expressway, Ijebu-Ode Ibadan Expressway, Ekiti. Where is it that the Nigerian is safe within Nigeria? Where? The saddest part is that this is not happening without state complicity. That is the scariest part and the part that should worry each and every one of us. The Nigerian government is complicit. This is the true worry. And we keep talking and they keep ignoring because they have gamed it that you don't care about yourselves. Once they can give you a reason to distract you, the victim is Igbo, the victim is Yoruba, the victim is Fulani, they are the ones who are harming the militia. The victim is Muslim, the victim is Shia, the victim is Christian, in fact, is Catholic. These are the reasons why we've chosen to ignore what we are seeing. If you are not happy, if you think I'm exaggerating on the loss of government control, the erosion of state authority and legitimacy, the failure of public service, if I've lied about the widespread violence, how about economic collapse? I'll show you. When is the economic collapse? You think it's only when you carry plate and you're queuing in line to be offered charity like you've seen happening in other parts of Africa that the colonialists happily highlight for you? I'll show you. In Nigeria today, we have ATM machines, but you won't find money in your ATM machines. You have to go to the POS. And we've all moved on. It's become normal. You go to the bank and they are rationing how much you can get. And yet, to a very large extent, our economy is still cash-based. But you're buying your currency within your own country. Every year, it gets flooded. Thanks, Dele. But who cares? Who cares? Your farmers can't go to the farm, so there is food poverty. Those who didn't used to need money to buy food, who just farm, they can't even farm. You know why? Your government turns a blind eye and colludes when terrorists employed by those mining solid minerals and rare earths chase those who would have farmed their land off their land. More people are living in IDP camps than in villages. And we don't know yet that it's a failed state. When is it a failed state? Exactly when? The so-called resilience of the Nigerian is not resilience in truth. It is not resilience. It is not even docility. It is a failure of purpose. Because if you don't live for something, what do you die for? If you can't die for something, what are you living for? These are questions we need to ask ourselves. These are questions we need to ask ourselves. Look all around us. Nigerians are, you've seen graphic pictures of Nigerians starving, taking hot food off boiling cauldron, separating sand, packing sand and rice together. How long can this go on? When Nigerians have been uprooted, some people have been living in refugee camps for over 10 years. Some people's homes have been renamed and resettled by Fulani terrorists imported into this country. The character of communities have been altered because of political expediency. And you say to me that this is not yet a failed state. Exactly when does it become a failed state? Exactly when does it become a failed state? You know, Yorubas speak about Ilen Soko. Ilen Soko is descriptive of when a house is about to collapse and then begins to crumble, and you find a few mortars shaking loose by the shakings, and then when it drops, Yorubas will say the house is throwing stones. The Nigerian house is throwing stones. It is showing you all the signs of a house about to collapse. Ẹni tí wọ́n ń wò láwò sunkún. Nigeria is that person that when assessed, people weep. But he looks at himself and is rejoicing. When two siblings go into a room and they come out smiling, they've lied to each other. They have lied to each other. Nigeria is dying. It is my remit to tell you this truth. It is not dead yet because me and you are still alive. We have the capacity to alter its trajectory. But it is entirely up to us. We need to first of all recognize that it is dying. It is dying. If your eyes are deep set, you should start crying early so that your tears will become visible. I've been telling you for a while that Nigeria is dying. It is dying. I've been saying this unceasingly for almost 10 years at great cost, personal and financial. We are not listening. I told you your judiciary is dead. When a judiciary is criminal and it can only deliver criminal outcomes, what becomes of the state? You called me mad. You hauled me to prison because I told you all the truth. And you still don't get it. If the judiciary is the last hope of the common man, and his hope has been so graphically taken away, what becomes of the common man? What is it that becomes of him? Nigeria is a failing, if not a failed state. It requires the urgent intervention of those who will be the ultimate victim of its collapse to save it, if it can still be saved.